Hello, everybody out there. I'm so happy to see you again. And today we have a special guest. That is Denise O'Reilly from UK. Hello and welcome to you.
Hi everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
You have, like everybody else who is an equestrian, an interesting life. I know that.
Yes, okay, yeah, we had a chat the other day, didn't we, about a few
Yes.
things. So yeah.
So please tell us about it. What
Yeah, so
how did you start with horses and yeah, how
yeah, so
was your
I
life?
didn't ride until I was 21. So it's quite late, really. And then I came just to a normal riding farm where we got on horses and rode around the farm. And then I had no horsey background, no horsey parents. I didn't even realize that adults could go to a riding school. I thought riding schools were for children. So I
Yeah.
hadn't realized at that point that I could actually go and take lessons. So where I went to learn at this farm, then you all went out in a group of 20 and you walked and trotted and clung on for dear life while the horse cantered up the field, and that's how you learn to ride. So um, and someone whacked it on the backside and made it go
Yes.
faster, and, and
How
you either
many
lived
is
in
still
blind
on?
terror or survived. So then a little later I started to take riding lessons, and I can remember the complete naivety of thinking, well, I've learnt to walk, trot, and canter now, and I can do a little jump. I don't know what else there is to learn, really. So I might as well just buy a horse. I mean, the stupidity. My God. My God, the stupidity, really. And it's a bit like when you learn to drive, isn't it? And
Yeah.
then the learning starts.
Yeah.
Then the learning starts. I hadn't realized that horses could be afraid of traffic. So I
Uh-huh.
take my new purchase, who's obviously a 4-year-old, and hack him from the place I bought him from up to the farm I was going to keep him. And we disappeared through a blackthorn hedge with great long thorns at some speed when a double-decker bus came on the lane. So I began really learning about horses then.
Oh,
So yeah, so obviously part of this journey was I wanted to be able to sit better because I'd realized then that there probably was quite a bit more to learn. And I'd also begun to get quite interested in dressage, and I'd been watching these amazing riders at competitions and really studying them and working out, well, what is it that they're doing? And again, I think the naivety helped. So I was naive enough to just think, watching some really incredible professional rider, well, they've got two legs and two arms like me. If they
yeah.
can do it, why can't I do it? So it's only later when you think, oh, are you kidding? So, I sort of watched, and I think in my riding lessons, I think I was the pain in the backside in the class, really, because the teacher would say something, and I would think about it, and I'd think, I don't know what that means. So in the UK, a typical thing would be something like use your seat or something like that. And I'm thinking, what does that mean?
Mm.
Which bit of it should I use? And what exactly
Yes.
should I do with it? And I'd look around the group lesson and I couldn't see what they were doing.
Uh,
They all seemed to be doing something different. And the teacher just said, yes, good. And I would put my hand up and say, sorry, excuse me, could you show me how to do that, please? Or tell me more about it? And, from the silence and the stony looks, it became quite obvious you weren't really supposed to ask things like that. And I later on sort of thought, well, I don't know. Is it that they don't have a good explanation, or do they actually not know? And I think it's
that's right.
possible. I think that's possible. And that as a beginner rider or a novice rider, there are places that probably don't have a whole lot of detail on that.
Mm.
So I started really asking questions, and I think I was asking all the right questions before I met my biomechanics guru, my coach and mentor, who really gave me some meat on the bones of what we were supposed to be learning about. And it was a bit like, thank God someone knows.
Yes.
Thank God someone knows some detail,
Yeah.
because that's what I needed. Um, I was an adult by then, so I didn't just, like as kids, you don't question what you're told, you just do, and you learn by doing a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think I didn't really do that. I wanted to know the answers, and I've always liked the theory, you see. I've always liked to know and to try and understand what it is I'm trying to do. And I always feel that gives me a better chance then
Mm.
of doing something productive with my
Exactly.
backside on a horse.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I began like that, and then I had this kind of really busy career in nursing. I was a theatre nurse at the time, and so I was riding part time. And then through learning about these biomechanics, I then began teaching biomechanics and to other riders, and this whole journey began. So, and then I had a very special horse. I think we've all had one, hopefully, at least one. But this boy was very special. So he was like a built like a cart horse, really. He was a big, heavy chunk of a guy. He had feet the size of a small dinner plate. Um, so he was quite unusual for a dressage horse, but he had this heart, this heart
Yeah.
and this wanting to do it, and he loved to learn, and we adored each other. I did originally steal him from my husband, who used to take him hunting, and then he wasn't quite sort of sound enough to hunt anymore, and we were worried about he had a little bit of arthritis in his front feet, so we didn't do that anymore with him or jump him.
No.
So I started taking him to some dressage, and I just, in with this kind of perfect storm of what happened at the time, I had my biomechanics person that was helping me a lot. But then I also met another trainer who was just, she'd had one horse at Grand Prix, but she wasn't a big name, but she really, really got me, and she really, really got my horse. And she kind of loved him, so that was, it couldn't have been better, really. So she was also very encouraging, and she made me at that stage very unafraid of mistakes.
Mm.
So, you know, she would say, we'll have a bash at something or have a crack at something, and it didn't matter to her whether I got it right, wrong, or indifferent. And then the learning begins. So I had this enormous freedom from her to learn things. And then we sort of carried on and competed through the levels: first level, second level, prelim, novice, and then elementary, which is as far as I ever thought I would get. And then we continued on and we learned how to do the movements of the medium. And then we discovered, my horse is 17 by this time.
Yeah.
Uh, she said, well, we haven't thought about doing a flying change yet for the next level. So maybe we should teach him a flying change. So I didn't know what to do. He didn't know what to do. So we had some interesting varieties of things that happened. And sometimes there was a lot of flying and not much changing. Uh, so, but we learned together because he had such a good heart, really, and because I had good help. So, and then we continued on from there, and he just shocked me at every level, really. So by the time he retired, we had competed at advanced. It's a rite of passage, really, isn't it, to wear the dressage tailcoat?
Mm.
And in those days, it was a top hat. And I will never be able to thank my coaches enough or my horse enough for enabling me to fumble my way along to doing that. But I think it kind of kick-started this whole thing about biomechanics and how you use your body, because I needed that detail. So my business at home is called The Dressage Secret. And one of the reasons it's called The Dressage Secret is because I did feel that some of the information out there was like a secret that the really good riders knew, but
Mm.
perhaps didn't even know that they knew. They
They
didn't.
just felt it
Yeah,
in the body.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And maybe their part, my my beginning of my journey was very conscious because I was an adult already.
Yeah.
Maybe their beginning of their journey was less conscious because they were maybe really small, or a child, and just sort of out there doing it. So the beginning parts, how to get from being a really novice rider with really not much idea to becoming a more competent rider was quite a difficult part of the journey, I thought. So I called what I do the dressage secret because it is like there are these secrets
Mm.
that are not terribly well explained. You get these
Wow.
uh,
I
blanket phrases. Yeah. Sorry,
I
Anne.
I remember from my riding, I had been riding for many years, and then I got another teacher, and
Mhm.
she told me exactly what to do, and I remember the feeling when I was just, wow, it's like this,
Exactly. It's so
and
exciting.
it took me many
Yeah.
years to come to that.
Yes. Yeah. It is exciting to know that, even if you've been riding for many years already, you can
Mm.
really improve yourself and through that improve your horse. Um, I began teaching this and then got the wonderful opportunity to teach a little bit abroad. So went on a few travels. Haven't done Hungary yet. Uh,
It will come.
you're welcome. Bring me when the sun is shining, please. So South Africa and Australia, France, Poland, and a few other places as well. So that was really nice. Then COVID hit, of course, and then everything changed. So I currently run a riding centre as well as teaching freelance. So it's a busy old life, but through that I've met so many wonderful people and really good riders and really dedicated riders at the start of their journey and riders who've got so far and then got very stuck. And I was kind of interested in your web page and what you were teaching your riders on because there's a lot of riders out there who are nervous,
Mm.
who are afraid.
Yeah.
And I started thinking, well, what can I add to that? What can I bring to that? Um, so hopefully I'll get a bit of a chance to tell you a bit more about that today.
Yeah. Sounds great. Sounds great. You
Well,
had a little story. I thought it was so funny about you coming to a new teacher with your horse with the big
oh
foot.
yes.
I just
Yes,
love
so
it.
yeah, so there are a few families in the UK who are sort of dressage royalty. I'm sure they wouldn't mind me saying they've probably long forgotten me, I would think. But the Alberg family is one such family, and Ferdy is the father, and Michael is the son. Very talented riders, very gifted, and Maria is the daughter, also very talented, very gifted and she was a great coach for me. I remember having to be very brave to book a lesson with her,
Yeah.
but she was fabulous actually. And I took my horse, a Welsh cob, cross thoroughbred there because the big guy with the big feet was getting older. And then one day, my Welsh cob cross had done something silly in the field, and I couldn't take him on that day, so I messaged her and said, "Is it okay if I bring the older horse?" And she said, "Yeah, yeah, sure, fine." So I turn up and she sort of looks at him as he gets off the lorry. You can read people's minds at this point, can't you? Because he is like a brick outhouse. I'm 5'2". He was 17 hands. And he was so wide, my little feet stuck out at the side of his ribs. He was just such a big boy. Um, so I went into the arena. I can just see her thinking, what in God's name am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah.
And he would really not look anything like any sort of dressage horse. So I said, okay, so what do you do with him, Denise? I says, well, um, we've done some advanced mediums and we've done a couple of advanced tests. Right, she said, and I could see her just looking, thinking, this woman is delusional. Does she really believe she's done that on this? Really? Right. She said, okay, I'm going to humor her. So she said, okay, so let's just start off in the walk and trot and warm up. And how old is he? And I said, he's 19. right. She said, I can see her losing the will to live already. Because she's like, what in God's name? So, so she said, so does he leg yield? And I said, yes, yes. So I showed her the leg yield, and she said, oh, okay. And have you done some shoulder in? And I said, yes. So we do some shoulder in. Right. So half passes, yes. Trot or canter. She said, you can do them in canter. And I said, yes. So well, as well, after a fashion. So we gave that a go. Right, she said, starting to take things just a little bit more seriously now. So she said, so what do you want help with today? And I said, well, I'd really like help because the flying change to the left is sometimes a little bit late behind. Okay. She said, well, let's have a look. So she had a look and she said, right, okay. So and then she was trying to get me. She said, maybe you could just move his hindquarters a little bit to the left, just before you do the flying change. And I thought about this and I thought, okay. Now I wasn't very experienced. My flying changes were properly winging it at this point. So I just thought, well, I've put my right leg back to try and move the quarters in, then I'm going to get the change already. So I really stupidly said to her, so how am I going to do that without getting the flying change? And she just looked at me, and it was like back to those teachers who looked at me when I was learning to ride, like,
Yeah.
are you simple? Do you not understand what's wrong with you? And she said, you just move the quarters over. Okay. And I thought, crikey. So into my biomechanics knowledge and my coach, who taught me lots of wonderful sort of images of what to do with your body. And she taught me this one about some sort of like a double of lines that go over the front of your body, up the midline, one either side of your midline, over the top of your head, down your back, and that should really align with the horse's spine. It's a nice image. So if you carried on that line along the horse's back, you'd end up with one line either side of his tail. And I thought I could move my lines to the left. So I moved my lines to the left, which of course moved his quarters to the left, and I got the change. And she said, right. She says, so what's so hard about that? And she just didn't have any awareness that without that body knowledge, I would have been completely sunk,
Yes.
and the lesson would have been a disaster, really. So,
Mm.
it's kind of my stuff that I do is bridging that gap between, the coaches who can really, really do this at top level, but may not have any idea of where you're at in your body and with your struggles, and much more at the beginning of the journey. They may really not quite understand why you're making such heavy weather of it all.
Mm.
Um, but we're all different, aren't we, really? And everybody's got their own struggles with it. So yeah, so she did
Yeah.
get her mother to come out and look at his feet, by the way, because she said, Mom, you've got to come and see this horse's feet. I've never taught a horse with such big feet. And I'm just going, please don't stand on anyone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that was actually sort of a bit of an epiphany there, because I don't think that she would have been able to tell me in any clear detail how to do that. I was
No.
expected to know that already.
Mm.
So there's this gap, that
Yeah.
people fall into, and then you get the lack of progression in their riding or their training of their horse,
Mm.
because um, there are these secrets that
Yes.
they need to know about. So okay, um,
Yeah, I
so
just
there's
love
your
the story because I could see her in my mind.
yeah.
Oh,
What is this
what is
woman
this?
on? She really did look at me like I was deluded, really. So, but I had a lot of fun with our horse, a lot of fun. So,
Yeah.
he was a great boy. He was. We used to feed him ginger biscuits, and he
Oh,
was a bright chestnut, and
yeah.
we always used to say, it's only the gingerness in the biscuits that keeps him ginger. So,
Oh,
oh dear. So
marvelous.
I've got a couple of things that I wanted to talk to your audience about, if that's okay, and about
Yes.
thinking about the confidence side of things, and
Yeah.
thinking about, I think a lot of the time when riders are afraid, when you've got some experience, I don't know what you think about it, but I think a lot of the riders are sensing something in the horse that makes them think something is going to happen. And that can be anything from the horse holding its breath, or some muscle tension. It can be really slight, ears that prick in a certain way. There is a way, isn't there, that ears prick. There's an
Yeah.
ears prick that's not worrying. There's an ears prick that you really wish wasn't happening. Um, and I think heightened awareness in the horse is often to do with this sort of hypervigilance where they have a little bit of adrenaline on board anyway, and that's often to do with discomfort in the body.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know, have you come across things like that as well? Is that something that you would work with?
Yeah, I work mostly in this way that I make both horse and human comfortable
Yeah,
in small
yeah,
steps, and
yeah,
I'm talk a lot about the brain, what is that is thinking, because our brain is always ahead of us in somehow.
yes,
And
yes,
as you said, you're thinking, wow, now it's going to be like this and this, and you have to train that not
yes,
to do
yeah,
it. Mhm.
yes. So I think that this business that I think about the horse's discomfort, I think that horses can get a low level of adrenaline going through their body all the time if they have discomfort. And common things would be kissing spine,
Mm.
um, ligament problems, things like that. Mild arthritis, something you may not notice as such as an unsoundness, but also muscle tension in the body just not having, strip it back to its most basic level, really, in that the horse's body may not have the tools to carry a rider well,
Mm.
and they may have a rider who is aware of that or unaware of that. And the rider may also be unaware of how to carry themselves and what to do in order to make themselves easier to carry and optimize how the horse moves its body, really. Um, so I think a lot about the patterns in the horse's body, and I think if the horse is working with a lifted back, then it's a beautiful experience. It's lovely. It feels so addictive, because you're sitting on this lovely rounded, soft swinging back. And if they're working well into the contact and well underneath themselves with the hind leg, I think those three things are very linked, but I don't think it happens easily or naturally for anybody, really. I think that's a very, very difficult thing to achieve. And I think that the information for me, again, feels a bit like one of these secrets that, if you can do it, then as a rider, you may not be quite aware of how you do it. So we all get told the same things, um, but there's often some missing information. So I thought I might talk a little bit about what I think is missing for
Mm.
most riders in that. Um, so I think the first thing is that, like, the horse's back is not meant to carry us. That's the first thing to say, and
Mm.
everybody knows that. That's obvious. But the other thing that it does carry, you've got all the attachments on there for the guts and everything else. So the spine is already being pulled downwards by the sheer weight of the abdominal contents. And then we add a saddle and a rider to that, and then it becomes more and more mechanically difficult for the horse to lift the back up. So the ways in which we can add to the burden without realizing it, one of the common things is to be slightly in what we call it here a chair seat. I don't know, do you call it a chair seat over there with the
Yeah,
leg in front of you?
yeah.
Yeah,
The leg is
like sitting
yeah,
on a chair.
yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, and I think that's quite common, particularly amongst riders who are perhaps leisure riders who hack out a lot, who maybe ride out and don't think about how they're sitting because they're just busy enjoying the countryside and having a nice time with their friends. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you can do something small to optimize how your horse feels, I think most riders I meet, whether they're leisure riders, dressage riders, whatever, want to do the best for their horse.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm probably going to be a bit emotive here and just stand up and say, I think if the horse's back functions well, I think they live longer. I think they're sounder longer. And I think you give them longer, happier, more useful lives because their muscles are functioning in a good way. And I think, you know, it's like our posture, if we don't function in a good way, that we get tightnesses and things like that. And it almost leads to sort of a chronic stress, really, where you might not even realize you're stressed. But if you're tight, let's say in your hamstrings or in your neck muscles and things like that, you do have a degree of chronic pain or discomfort.
Yes.
And it adrenalizes you. So that adrenaline then brings around the stress, cortisol, and the chronic problems that happen with cortisol in the body, you know, and the ensuing tightness in the muscles. So this is a cycle that I think goes on in quite a low level, but it doesn't mean it's not significant. So I think I appeal to those riders who want to know more and want to sit well and do the best for the horse, because I don't know many riders who don't really. We all adore our horses, don't we? So, you know, for me, that's really, really important. So, I've just made myself a couple of notes here, so forgive me looking to the side. So I think that the back has to be strong to carry, and it has to function as a bridge between the hindquarters and the forehand of the horse. So if it has to carry you, how much can it move? So to illustrate that, you can think about yourself carrying 2 bags of shopping, heavy shopping, and trying to move your arms at the same time. And the movement is restricted by the need to carry. Yeah. So if the more we can reduce the stress of the horse carrying us, the better for the horse's body, and the more the back muscles, the 2 long back muscles that we sit on, 2 long strips of muscle that pass underneath the saddle, if we can enable those to be able to move, then we're really beginning to get the horse to function in a good way. Yeah, so I've got a couple of exercises that I thought we should probably run past your listeners and see what they think about them. So the first thing is that if you are in the chair seat, you are going to be adding to the weight the horse has to carry on its back. If you come more to, and this is in every book on riding, the shoulder, hip, heel line up. Yeah, that straight line down through the ear and the shoulder. And it's the knobble on the side of your hip. So your listeners can dig around the side of their thigh where it joins the hip and find that little knobble. And then that should line up with the knobble on your side of your ankle. So it isn't the back of the heel and the back of the bum. It's those 2 knobbles, because they're the skeletal markers, the markers of the skeleton that would line us up into more of a kneeling position. So when we kneel, then our weight is taken much more on the horse's rib cage.
And there it would be very important to have a good saddle to sit in.
Yes.
Because some saddles, if it's not quite right, you will get in this wrong position.
Yes. So the seat of the saddles, you know, you want that to be as level as possible, really.
Yes.
And if you've got a saddle that's sort of uphill at the front, it's impossible. Then you're automatically in a chair seat.
Yes.
As much as one that sits down at the front will tip you forward. So
yes.
And one of the things that we have a lot over here, I don't know about in Hungary, is these really marvelous Velcro knee blocks. Do you have these ones?
Yes, yes.
Oh, I love them. As a teacher, I love them because, you know, you can move that knee block a centimetre up or down or back or forwards and make the most enormous difference. So I think that's a gift to be able to have that movable knee block. So if you first try and find your shoulder, hip, heel line up. You can either ask a friend, or you could just hold a schooling whip down from the knobble on your hip and see whether it lines up vertically. If you have mirrors, you're lucky. If not, maybe you can talk a friend into videoing you to see if you have this. And
Exactly.
it's kind of, for a lot of riders, it's surprisingly far back. But the angle in the knee is important as well. So the knee needs to be, the angle behind the knee needs to be about 90 degrees, 100 degrees at most, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of leisure riders perhaps ride a little bit too long to
Mm-hmm.
get that.
Mm-hmm.
So sitting on their bottom is easier than kneeling on their knees for them.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have the ability to put your stirrups up a hole or something like that, then you certainly make that a lot easier. Um, and in with the kneeling, one of my favorite exercises, I don't do a huge amount of no stirrup work, but I do a huge amount of hovering on the knees so that you lift your bottom out of the saddle and you push your knees down into a point. Your lower leg will be or feel a little bit behind you, but the balance point is where you can comfortably balance without holding on. And I think if you try that and then you notice that if you push your heel down and forward, then you end up sitting back down again. And also, if you take your leg too far behind you, then you'll end up kissing the horse's neck.
Yeah.
So the balance point there, that really deepens the thigh down
Yeah.
into the saddle. So the deep seat for me is all about deepening the thigh and then finding the connection of the thigh muscles. So if the inner thigh muscles, if you rotate your thigh by grabbing hold of your hamstrings at the back, roll your thigh around, rolling the thigh muscle to the back, and then place the thigh really flat on the saddle. So it used to be something that was done a lot, and maybe I don't know what it's like over in Hungary, but here it's probably less fashionable to do that now. But a few years ago, that was how you set yourself up, really. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of merit in that. So when you have a good thigh connection and a good connection through your seat all the way down to your thigh and your knee, then that really you've increased the bearing surface. So of the whole seat, and that's increased the bearing surface across the rib cage, not just on the horse's back. So you can see already how that just makes the biggest difference in how the horse has to carry you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, feeling the freedom of their back, if you ask the hind leg to take a bigger step underneath you with your leg, then the back begins to move and lift underneath you. And the mere fact that you've then got more weight on your knees than on your bottom, yeah, really helps the horse to move those long back muscles. And that's stage one, really, of really getting that right. Um, so what are your thoughts on that, Anne? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not 100% with you. My English words are not, but I
Apologies.
know what you mean,
Yes.
but with the seed and everything. And I know they have been studying a lot with saddles and seats and everything, that most of the saddles are made for men, not for women.
Okay. Right.
You have problems with your hips and so on, but
Yes.
as you tell it here, that is more like we should uh, carry our weight in the knees.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, more weight in the knees. And I think initially you might even feel like you are tipped a little bit forward.
yes,
Um, and then you can gradually sort of come back more to upright because the angle at the front of your body where your hip flexors are, where your hip meets your body, your
yeah,
torso,
yeah,
that angle, I think, tends to stay the same in riders. So if you bring your lower leg back underneath you, the angle tries to stay the same because of muscular tightness or weakness. and then you end up a little bit tipped forward. So those hip flexors have to stretch, and finding a good um, therapist or physical exercise person who can help you with that would be a huge bonus, really.
Mm-hmm.
That's a tight place in a lot of, because most of us drive quite a lot, and then you're instantly, or sit at a desk for work, and then you're
Mm.
instantly tightening those hip flexors. Um, so that's worthwhile investing in. So I didn't know whether we could do something as well with listeners where they can find their seat bones. It might be too basic, I don't know, but I regularly see
Nothing
riders
is
who,
too
yeah,
basic.
I
Nothing is
don't
too
know.
basic.
Yeah, I don't know that people always know where their seat bones are. So
Mm.
um, hopefully that if your audience can find a firm chair and sit on their own fingertips with the palms facing upwards. So if you put your fingers underneath your bottom, and then you find two bones in your bottom, your two seat bones. And if you can't find them, then the thing to do is to hollow your back, to lift up through your chest, first of all, and they should get really sharp and really pointy. And then to very slowly round out the lumbar area of your spine, and you should feel them getting softer and rounder. So you want to think about, like, if you hollow your back, what you feel is that the seat bones begin to point to the back of the chair. And if you round out your back, then the seat bones begin to point forward to the front legs of the chair.
Yeah.
So everything starts really with this neutral spine, neutral pelvis. And if you have your fingers underneath there, if they haven't gone dead by now, then you can maybe kind of just roll yourself very gently from hollow back to round back and back again until you find the place where you feel that your seat bone sits straight down, vertical to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then maybe you need to give your fingers a rest.
Yeah.
But then, if you think of stacking your spine out of that really neutral pelvis, then you can begin to do. Oh, there was a game we used to play. Maybe I can show you as kids, called one potato, two potato, where you put your fist on top of each other,
Mm.
and you can think of stacking your spine like one on top of the other,
Yes.
so that you really feel that each vertebrae stacks coming out of your pelvis. And that's a really good way to find your neutral spine. So I have this other little trick. Sorry, gentlemen, this only applies to ladies. So if you think, sorry, it's a bit personal, I guess, but never mind, your listeners, grown-ups. If you find the bottom boundary of your bra, that needs to be horizontal to the ground. So if you think of riders that lift the chest and hollow their back too much, then that line would point backwards. Yeah.
Ah, yeah.
They lift it at the front.
Mm.
If you wear one of these torture devices on a daily basis, you know where the bloody thing is.
Yes.
For sure. Yeah, okay. So you really want to try and make that really horizontal. And that gives you really good feedback against your body so you can actually feel where you are. Again, it's good if you haven't got mirrors or you can't find a handy friend or husband to film you
Mm.
while you're riding. So then we've got the neutral pelvis, the neutral spine, the lovely shoulder, hip, heel line up, and you're pretty much stacked in a really good way then to begin to help your horse to carry you. You are the easiest load you could be in at that point, really. So yeah, and then I think the next thing that I would think about is what I call the plugging in of the seat bones. Okay, so if you think of, I see a lot of riders doing quite a lot of pushing with the bottom.
Yes.
And there must be some sort of human instinct that we believe that this is going to make the horse go. I don't think I've ever seen it make a horse go.
It's like when you sit in, I don't know what you call it in English, like
In a
this, and
swing.
yeah,
Yeah,
swing,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that's it, exactly, yeah.
yeah,
And I think there's also sometimes an idea that you should follow the horse's movement
Yes.
with your seat.
Yes.
So I think this idea is generally out there, but I see a lot of riders kind of doing too much with that. So they
Mm.
have more movement in their seat than the horse has in its back. So to have your seat bones be really influential, this is quite a cool thing to do if you're just riding out or you just want to walk around the arena and you've got some time to mess about with stuff. Is to see if you can think of your two seat bones, um, almost like they're like a plug, two pins on a plug. And then the horse's back as if it has two holes that you're going to plug them into.
Mm.
And if you've ever tried to put a plug in the wall in the dark, you get this feeling that it goes backwards and forward over the socket and it doesn't quite connect in.
Mm.
And you look for that same feeling in your own seat bones. So the first thing to do is to halve the movement of your seat bones so you get more still.
Yeah.
And then to halve it again. And then guess what? Halve it again. Yeah. Until you get a real stillness through your seat bones and a really good connection with the horse's back so that the horse doesn't unplug you with his own movement or that you don't unplug yourself with your movement.
Mm.
It's quite incredible, really, then just how much influence you can have on the horse.
Yes.
So, this is, it's not just being still as a statue, you're still relative to the horse's back. Yeah. So I think it's rather like if you're on a cross trainer, do you know what I mean in the gym? The one where your arms go and your legs go opposite ways.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So if you're on a cross trainer, you're standing on the little pedals, and you're working your arms, and your legs are not still. Your feet aren't still in space, but they're still relative to the pedal. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that we're going for the same kind of stillness in the rider's seat bones relative to the horse's back. And you can really then collect the walk a little bit with your seat bones just by bringing that movement smaller. And you can also halt with your seat bones and by
Mm.
closing the tops of your thighs.
Mm.
And for me, this is like really good horsemanship because when you do something really right with your body, not to say that you wouldn't need the rein, I think you should close your fingers on the rein, I think, of
Mm.
course, but you reduce the pressure that you need
Mm.
to slow or to stop the horse. And I think, again, I don't know any riders out there who would not be interested in doing better for their horses,
Mm.
by doing things like this. If you have to pull less, put less pressure on the horse's
Yeah.
mouth, why wouldn't you? So this, use your seat. We go back to the old riding lessons that I had with all these confusing sayings. That really is a way of using your seat.
Mm.
Use your seat to slow the horse down or to stop it. And there we've got the detail of what that actually means. Yeah, or one version of what it means.
Mm.
Which hopefully is a bit more helpful than just use your seat. Yeah, so whatever that means.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Yeah. You get a clue what you mean with
Yes, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. So I think that connection starts with the seat bones, and I think plugging in is a great way to get closer to your horse. It's quite amazing as well that if you just pick up a normal rein contact, plug in your seat bones, and have this alignment in your body with a good connection with your thighs, quite a lot of horses would already be starting to lift their back and be rounder through the neck and reaching to the bit with the neck. So, you can begin this already without doing anything very much with the horse's mouth at all.
Mm.
Um, so I think contact wise, it's also important to have the detail on the contact as well. So I would say if you closed your eyes and you thought about somebody had taken your bridle off and you just got the bit and a reins, and then you've got to have enough pressure that you don't let the bit fall against the horse's teeth. So that's just a contact.
Mm.
It's not too much, not too little. Hopefully, it's just right. Um, so I'm giving you lots of little details about like the biomechanics work and what it does, and the dressage secret and what that does, to hopefully fill in some of the gaps really that riders might have in their own knowledge of how to do things and what to do.
Mm. Do you have courses in that, or you writing it down, or how do you?
Well, I keep thinking that I should do this. So I think I'm going to start and put some content on, and have a YouTube channel that goes by the same name, and going to begin with some content so that people can see it in action, because I think that's, hopefully, people will go and run experiments and try these things when they're on their own horse,
Yeah.
um, or in a chair or whatever. But it's even better to see it actually in action. So, but I mean, the way in which a horse can follow your seat bones is incredible. I mean, the first time I learned about this, I had a real runaway mare, she was very kind, but she just ran away all the time.
Mm. Mm.
She'd been on the hunting field, and she didn't really have much of a canter. So she used to go from trot directly to gallop, um, and was pretty fast and pretty hair raising, really. And she could kind of run off with you in walk. You could be
Yeah.
walking,
Yeah.
and my coach would say, "So who is taking who?"
Mm.
So, well, she's taking me, obviously, because she always does. So just in the walk, she was already running away.
Yeah.
But in that running away, she was also not using her back in any good way. So when I first kind of learned about plugging in the seat bones like this, it was like a revelation that I'd got some way to control the speed without, being on her mouth all the time.
Mm.
Um, but later, the revelation that I could move my seat bones into canter was amazing. So if they're already plugged in and your seat bone is going to canter, the horse will canter.
Yeah.
If you're not quite plugged in, then that's not going to happen. But that astounded me, and still does, really.
Mm.
For as long as I've been doing it, it still is absolutely astounding, the difference you can make with this. So,
Mm.
and it's kind of subtle and beautiful at the same time.
Is you just have to think the thought, and then it goes through your
Yes.
body, and the
Yes.
horse is aware of it. Mm.
Yes, I mean, it is unbelievable, isn't it? I think majority of listeners who've had a horse for a little while will know that feeling that there's almost a telepathy between the two of you,
Mm.
and the fine tuning in your body and how your body changes. Like how do they know if you want a down transition before you've even done an aid, a traditional aid? They always know. Um, how do they always know when you want to go into the trot? And they always do know.
Mm.
So it is truly astounding, really, from that point of view.
Yeah, that's great. I'm looking forward to that channel.
Yeah, I'm going to get cracking on that. So I've got a young lady coming to see me tomorrow, actually, who she's in media studies, and she's young, so she knows all about, how to do these things. And that's, I suppose, really, I've been looking for the right person to work with.
Mm.
And she's actually very exciting to work with. So we have our first meeting tomorrow, and then hopefully we can start and film some content. I want to make it short so you can watch it in your
Yes,
lunch break, and
you
20
have to
minutes.
repeat it so many times.
Yes, of
It
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. So, and also I'm thinking that I have to um be brave and put myself on the horse as well, because I think a lot of riders out there, it's all right watching somebody who's really wonderful. You watch the world's greatest riders, it is truly amazing to see, jaw dropping. I don't know how much it helps you,
No.
because sometimes they are so far away. from where you are as an ordinary
Mm.
rider. Whereas, someone like me, I may not be so far away, and and I'm small. I don't have big long legs or anything like that. Small and menopausal, and maybe not an ideal rider shape. So, but if I can show what
No, but
can be done,
yeah,
then that's inspirational, hopefully, for people, because that's something that the average rider can do without being a dressage build or
yeah,
having a dressage budget. So, I certainly didn't
absolutely.
have a dressage budget for the chestnut boy, which is why I had an ex-hunter. And currently I'm riding one of the riding school horses, rocking it, so, and loving every moment with it. She's fabulous. So, each horse can give
Yeah.
you their best, can't they, really?
There's so many more riders in that level than
Yes,
Olympic
absolutely.
riders.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where it's like the average rider out there who really wants to know, they're the ones that we want to be able to help, really. So,
Mm.
um, yeah. So I had another couple of exercises. I don't know how much time I'm going to get, but I thought
Yeah, you just
we're all right. Yeah. Okay.
just
So
yeah.
another exercise is really about muscle tone, and here is where I want to talk about. You mentioned earlier, and about saddles being made for men, and
Mm.
I actually think quite a lot of riding instructions are made for men because they originally came from the military, who in those days were men, and
Yes.
they were spending many hours in the saddle, and they were fit, and not like the average person who's riding 2 or 3 times a week. Um, and a woman. So we have the effects of estrogen on our bodies as a woman is to make our muscles softer and more pliable um, than a man's muscles. So a man with testosterone rather than estrogen has about 35% higher muscle tone.
Mhm.
So when they talk about riding, I don't know that they know how it feels to be in a body that is softer and not firmly toned. And most women, the average woman rider, is more like that. I do meet some high tone women, and for sure, all the professional riders have learned how to tone
Mm.
themselves. But
You.
I think in the way that it's talked about with the amateur riders is, we have all this thing about relax. And I think if you relax an already soft muscle, then you're going the wrong way with the muscle tone, really. Um, and we have to try to find muscle tone that brings about this stillness through like with the plugging in feeling. That's all about stillness relative to the horse. And then they can, if you like, hear your signals, your aids more clearly if you don't have movement that you don't mean to be doing. So I think the muscle tone is something that's really worth talking about because I think it's much higher than people think to get the stillness. So have a few tendons in the body. So when we activate a tendon, we end up it kind of sticks out like a piece of firm rope, um, and the tendons put the muscles into the ideal state. So if we go from uh, the top of our body down, the first tendon is actually underneath your armpit. So if you put yourself into a neutral spine and you pull down hard on your armpits, and you can put your hand in the one armpit and feel the tendon here. And as you pull down, you'll activate that tendon. So that then gets the muscles through the upper body much more into the right state. So
Mhm.
that would be upper body. Then if we go to the muscles and the tendons in the rider's groin area, obviously that's a very, very close area with the saddle. If we sit on a firm chair again, knees slightly apart, and you put your own arm with your fist against the inside of one knee and your elbow on the inside of the other knee, and you try to push your knees together, and that will then activate the tendons at the top of your thigh into your groin. And that's another active tendon that really switches on the right sort of muscle tone. The next tendon that we think about is behind the knee. And then again, we can do this. The knee tendon actually is so good for keeping the lower leg still, in balance with the tendons at the front of the foot. So the back of the knee and the front of the foot is part of stabilizing the lower leg. Again, I don't know any riders that don't want a more stable lower leg.
Mm.
Everybody does. It's
That's right.
hard, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's really hard, yeah.
Mm.
So if you're again sitting on a chair, you have your foot on the floor and you put your fingers behind the inside of the knee and the outside of the knee. If you imagine then that your foot is sort of glued to the ground or something like that, and you're going to try to draw the foot backwards, but it won't go because it's glued. But you really met the effort of drawing the foot backwards, and you feel those tendons pop out. Most people feel the inside tendon more than the outside tendon. But that again is sort of shows, and it's surprising, you try it and you think, my goodness, is it really this much? And it really is. So it's out of our comfort zone as women because we're used to being softer than that,
Mhm.
and sometimes then we're told to be softer than that,
Yeah.
which is a little bit going in the wrong direction, really. And then the foot tendons, wrap your whole hand around, or your two hands around the ankle, um, and then try to lift your toes up as if your foot is glued to the ground, and spread your toes out, and you feel the front tendons in the ankle activate as well. So between those and the tendons behind the knee, you get that lower leg stability. It'll feel, some people might worry about it being tense or things like that. I think that's part of the tell that it is more tense than we used to. So a little tendon activating exercise for people if they
Yeah,
like
that's
such
great.
torture.
Yes. I never heard of this before.
Right, okay.
No.
So, oh, good. Well, hopefully it's, and there again, you've got the more secure seat. And I think as a rider, if you're on your channel and you're looking at becoming a braver rider, if you have a better seat, you do feel, you can survive that spook, that
Yes.
little buck, that,
Yes, that's
whatever
right.
they're going
Yeah.
to do. So, finding this higher muscle tone,
Mm.
I think it's important to get the breathing right, though.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. So, um, my final exercise is just a breathing exercise, really, and will probably resonate with anyone who's done yoga or anything like that, or if they play a wind instrument, or if they sing,
Yeah.
then you always breathe in this way.
Mm.
I sing really badly, so I've had to learn how to do this without singing. I also do yoga really badly. I can make that into a thing that lands me in A&E, trust me. So really can. So if you sit upright on your firm chair, again, a firm chair is great for this, or if you've got somebody to hold your horse, and you find the bottom of your ribs and you put your fingers around like you're trying to encircle yourself. Now my fingers on me are a long way from encircling me at all, but some of your tiny listeners may be closer. But when we put the fingers around the ribs, and when you breathe, your goal is to try to push your hands apart and not to let the chest come up, so that your rib cage becomes like a flared skirt, almost flaring out. Um, I recently taught this to one of my riders who's a para rider, and she had a dreadful accident and ended up had almost finished her riding career, but then she came back as a para rider and she's ridden at a good level. Um, but this breathing for her really enabled her to get a better balance in the saddle.
Mm.
And getting that right, she realized, how little attention she pays to it, really, uh, as do we all. So whenever you're firming up muscles, tendons, etc., the breathing has to stay really like a diaphragmatic breathing. So, and also if you feel a little bit scared,
Yes.
you can
Yes.
do the
I
diaphragmatic
yes.
with or without the singing.
We also use singing. That's a good
Yeah,
exercise when you are
yes,
afraid.
yeah. I had a teacher who she used to sing Auntie Mary had a canary up the leg of her drawers.
Yes.
If it didn't make you sing, it'd make you laugh.
Yeah, and
But there
when
you
you
go.
laugh, everything
Yeah,
is good.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. The UK is full of really eccentric people, though.
that's great.
Oh dear. Uh,
Yeah.
so, and is there anything else that you wanted to ask me about?
Yes, I will ask you if anybody wants to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
So I have a Facebook page at the moment, which is probably the best place. And that is Denise O'Reilly and the Dressage Secret. So they can head on over to there. There's lots of articles on there. Soon there'll be some more interesting content on there. Already some short videos on there. So they can contact me on there or through the website, which is www.tds, the Dressage Secret, ridingcentre.co.uk, which is more, for the riding centre that I have, but I will pick up emails through that as well. So, and I'm visiting Finland soon if anybody wants to hop
Mm,
down there
that's not so
to
far from
teach a few.
Sweden.
No, it's not so far, no.
Uh, that's great. It has been a pleasure to hear all that, and I'm really excited about it. As I said, I have never heard about these things, so and I have been with horses for many years, so
Yeah,
it's right on time, I think.
yeah.
But you
It's
learn
great to be
every
able to learn
day.
new things. Yeah, absolutely
Yeah,
with horses all the time. Yeah,
all the time.
yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me, Anne. It's been a pleasure, and I hope I haven't talked too much.
No, no, it's your program, it's your
Yeah. Oh, thank
podcast.
you.
So thank you very much for coming. It has really been a pleasure. And
My pleasure indeed. Yeah.
thank you
Goodbye.
to
Thank
all
you.
of you out there who has been listening or see this. And please subscribe so we can carry on every week as we used to. Thank you so much for being here today. Have a good time wherever you are in the world.
Bye all.